And
Actually,
that way,
I have a tiny question.
yeah, go on.
My Robinhood said Tesla was 4.
One for that. Okay. Let's go to this. Okay. So we want to look at unemployment here. So unemployment basically means that you're out of a job. But before we talk about what it means to be out of a job, we have to look at things like is the idea that for unemployment, is that it's going to reflect both the business cycle and what naturally exists out there in the market. And by that, I mean that you can lose your job in 1 month, have already the next job lined up, but you would tell your next boss, like, I'm going to go on vacation. Like, we were interviewing someone at West Oahu. We were hiring someone for one of our Title III grants, the grant I'm running with the Bloomberg Project. And I kid you not, the woman was actually, I shouldn't identify particular people. The candidate was a really good candidate for the job. And we said, like, we're really far behind. We got to get this going. It's summer. This is the time you make all your progress is when the students aren't here. So that we can hit the ground running in middle of August when students start, signing up for the class. And what got her, among other things, what worked against her was that she told us, I bought tickets to the Olympic. This is obviously before COVID and everything else. This is the summer before. This is last year. She said, I bought tickets for the Summer Olympics. I'm going to the Olympics. I cannot start the job until the Olympics are done. And we're like, dude, we need you now. Can't wait for the Olympics to be done. And she didn't get the job, right? But you can imagine that kind of person being naturally unemployed. Naturally unemployed meaning we have a free market, a free labor market, where employers can decide when to hire you and employees can decide when they want to work, right? And if it's not mutually agreeable, then the person doesn't get the job. So it's called natural because there's some sort of natural frictions in the labor market. We know that we're at that point because if we have a two good world, good X and good Y, that there could be a production possibilities frontier that looks like this, and I'm on the frontier. That doesn't mean there's no unemployment. It means I'm producing where there's just a normal everyday unemployment. And that normal everyday unemployment is about 5%. But what we then add to it is the fact that, like right now, we have people out of work because they can't find a job. That's because we are in a business cycle, because we're in a recession. There's more unemployment. Let's just say it's adding 3%. So now my total unemployment would be 8%, higher than normal, right? And if we look at the data, sorry, I know how to spell it. I was just typing on an iPad. So I'm just taking all the data that goes all the way back to 1947, 1948. You would see that if I could draw a line at that 5%, do you see how we go above it and below it from time to time? That basically reflects the business cycle. And those gray regions you see are recessions. So in the gray regions, you would see that the unemployment goes higher than 5%. And when we're in the economic boom time, it goes lower than 5%. And obviously what becomes interesting here is that despite the fact that it was even mismeasured, that the unemployment rate was still over 15%. Well, so right now we're obviously in a recession where the unemployment rate is well above the natural rate. But before that, it was below it. And so you would see this right here, right? This key idea that in the recession, the actual rate will be above that rate. The idea again that the actual unemployment is equal to the natural plus the cyclical. Sorry, I just can't fit the L in there because I'm off of my slide. The actual unemployment is the number of unemployed over the size of the civilian labor force. In economic good times, that actual unemployment rate would be less than the natural rate. Now, this is the data that goes out to 2006, saying really nothing different than what I'm saying here. Now, here you would see that the natural rate of unemployment is changing, like it's going sometimes above 5, below 5. Yeah, technically speaking, the natural rate of unemployment is calculated. It's not just always 5% because it's a convenient number. But what I said is still true, that in a recession, you're going to be above that natural rate. In an economic boom time, you're going to be below that rate. Now, let's talk about how we measure that natural rate. So L is going to denote our number of workers in the labor force, E, the number of employed, U, the number of unemployed, U over L, the unemployment rate. So the first idea here is that L is exogenously fixed. This is our assumption number one. Basically just saying we have a certain number of workers in the world. And now what you're concerned about is what are the flows into this labor force and out of it. So now what we need to do is, if we think about those who are employed, how do you go from being employed to unemployed? That would be determined by S. How many job separations are there out there? Now that S can be voluntary or involuntary, right? Voluntary job separation would be resigning. Involuntary job separation would be being fired. And sometimes it's just a nuance of, did you beat your boss to saying, you can't fire me, I quit. Right? Have I ever been fired? I remember once in college, a good friend, Ryan Conboy, and I both had this job at like, I went for college. We had my college was, was residential college, so that meant that there were dorms and the cafeteria was open late, and so I had like this horrible shift, like Saturday nights, like midnight to 2 a.m. It's horrible shift to do, but I would do it like hungover because all you're making are like pizza bagels and that kind of stuff, easy stuff to make. And my friend Ryan Conboy got laid off, I think. I think they were running out of money and they just laid him off. And I found it so offensive that they laid my friend off that I just stopped showing up to work. I don't think I ever resigned, but it might be that I got fired. I don't know. Steven, have you ever been fired?
Yes, one time I kind of did the like a quit thing.
What was that? You quit, did you say?
Yeah, just I was working with like three of my really good friends at a t-shirt printing place.
Yeah.
And they're about like 15 or 16.
Yeah. That's
got,
totally the time to get fired, right? Because when you're 15 or 16, you got like absolutely no expenses going on, you know?
yeah. But there was a computer that everyone would go on and play music and kind of goof off while we were working, and I never
Yeah.
touched it one time. And then I went on it for the first time after like working there for probably a year, a little more, and
Yeah.
one of the girls working there like told on me and my friends because I just showed them a quick video, something.
Yeah.
But then we got in a big argument with them, and they were like, I guess we kind of quit. They told us to leave, and then they asked us to like come back a few hours.
Yeah, turn in your apron. Don't come back here. Well, I guess in a shirt factory, turn in all your discarded t-shirts. Hey, for that kind of job, did you get to keep the discarded t-shirts or the misprinted t-shirts or no?
I guess I never really asked, but
Oh man, that would be like, like it was supposed to say like, you know, uh future entrepreneur, but it said like, like future became like a swear word or something. You could like put swear words on the shirts. I don't know, like might it be funny, but um
yeah.
yeah, but everything else I've always resigned from. That's not as fun. Okay, let's go back to this. Okay, so voluntary and involuntary job separations, but obviously that rate's going to become important because that's going to determine how many employed people we have, because the size of the civilian labor force is my number of employed plus my number of unemployed. So S is basically the rate at which E is becoming U, right? I mean, that's one way to think of it, right? That as you become separated, you become unemployed, presuming that you're going to look for work again. And then there's the rate of job finding, right? Which would be the opposite side of this. This would be the rate at which U becomes E. Does that make sense to everyone so far? Yes. If you don't say anything, I'm going to presume that's the case. So then you've got this kind of picture here of how we could imagine what I just said here, that these look to be reversed. I took this picture. I did not make this picture. This looks to be reversed. I don't know if the person who made this was drunk or should be fired or separated from their job. Am I missing something here? Does this look wrong to anyone, everyone, no one? I did not make this picture, so I take no ownership over it, except that I stole it. It looks wrong.
I don't know what's wrong about it.
The shape looks a
would
little
be-
funny, but it could be correct. I don't know.
So the problem is the arrows, the direction that the arrows are going. So if this is my separations and this is my number of employed, so we'd be saying, let's say that there's 1 million people, okay? And let's say that, I'm just gonna make up a big number, 10% become separated from their job. Wouldn't that be saying that there's 100,000 more unemployed? Right, so that wouldn't it be this instead of the other way around? Am I missing? I mean, does that make sense? What I wrote versus this thing?
Yeah, I think that makes a lot more sense.
as long as you agree with the theory I said, and I'll repeat it again, as long as you agree with the theory of what I just said, this picture would also be in the Mankiw book because I stole it from the Mankiw book. So if you're reading the textbook, the same picture will be there. But unless I'm missing something in the explanation that's in the book, maybe they're saying today's opposite day when I'm reading this book. That would be a horrible trick to play on undergrads, but I don't put it past Mankiw. What I'm saying here is that what we just saw in the previous slide is that there's a rate of separation. Let's say that every month, 10% of the number of employed lose their job, either voluntarily or involuntarily, meaning they resign or they're fired. And that the size of the number of employed is 1 million people. So if 10% of 1 million is 100,000, and that would mean that 100,000 people are moving from the employed category to the unemployed category. Alternatively, this is my rate of finding a job. This is my number of unemployed. So let's say that I have 100,000 people that are unemployed and 10% of my people find a job, right? Then my employed is going to go up by 10,000. Does that make sense? So what we would see here with this imbalance, as I've structured it, is that my unemployment rate would go up, right? Because I'm not transferring that many people to employed as continue to exist in unemployed, right? Or seen another way, every month, 100,000 people become unemployed, but 10,000 people find a job, meaning I'm left with a net of 90,000 that are still unemployed. Said another way, this is the steady state, what I'm just stating here. If in what I just set up here is that this is 10% and this is 1 million, and that this is also 10%, and that this is 100,000, we would not be at a steady state, right? Because this is not equal. And if it's not equal, then which side is greater? Well, as we saw here, this side was greater in the way that I just set this up, which would mean that unemployment would grow. That's what's happening, like, for instance, right now, right? Is that, yes, people are absolutely finding jobs, right? They're going on Indeed, they're finding a job, right? Because they lost their job at the hotel, right? And they're finding a job now working at the Olive Garden. Oh, dude, does anyone go to the Olive Garden this weekend?
I don't have plans to, but I will eventually.
Have any of you ever been to one in this class?
I've been to some.
On the mainland, yeah.
Yeah, I've been in California and Washington.
I went to one for my junior prom in high school. Unlimited breadsticks and soup. Right? But the person lost their job as a bed maker at the hotel, and now they're serving breadsticks. But that's the exception rather than the norm, is what we're trying to say here. Is that there's more people becoming unemployed as the hotel then says, wow, we really don't need anyone here. But the idea is that we'll know the economy has reached a steady state, meaning the unemployment rate does not change when these are equal. As it says here, that the unemployment rate would remain constant. The contributions to the employment is equal to that which is taking away from it. But you would only see that in the long run. So let's find what that rate is. Let's find what the steady state condition is, or read another way, what is the natural rate of unemployment? It is this. That's a natural rate of unemployment, which is my total number of unemployed over the size of the whole labor force. That's my left side of the equation. Now, you don't have to worry about this math up here. I'm not going to ask you to do it. This class, if we were doing this class in person, I'd walk you through the math. This is kind of one of the losses of having this class under COVID is that I think it's a little bit more difficult to do it this way because you're going to have access to this obviously when you take the second exam. And again, for those of you who came in late to this Zoom class, by tomorrow I'll have the exams graded and you'll have a better sense of where you're at in the class. But for the most part, it's the short answers where everyone's exam grades are going to be redeemed. And again, don't quote me on it, but if my memory serves me right, that the class average just in terms of the multiple choice was something like 50 or 60%. So if you're looking at a pretty ugly score on the La Lima multiple choice, don't worry, because if the class average is 50%, you know it's got to be pretty rough. But I think that's actually pretty great. You had you had open access to your notes. It doesn't show your lack of understanding of the material. It just shows that it was rigorous enough, right? And I just make sure that you don't fail the class. That's, it's not on you, that's on me.
Professor, I just wanted to
yeah.
interrupt really quickly. I
Sure.
forgot who was talking about this earlier, but I was looking at my exam also, and I wanted to second her response. Just the whole some of the questions might have been like the actual answer was registered incorrectly, so you might want to check on those
that would
just
be
in case.
fantastic. That would be fantastic if that were the case.
Because even I was like, this literally is what it said in the textbook kind of thing, and it was marked as wrong. But yeah, just in case to clear up our worries, so to speak.
I will look at that tonight. I'm going to look at that tonight. Again, no one should worry in this class. I mean, but yeah, that's a good question. I'll look at that tonight.
Thank you.
Yep, not a problem. Okay. That is if I don't fall asleep. I always intend to go to campus back again at night and catch up on grading, but sometimes I fall asleep on the couch. I'm a total fall asleep on the couch kind of person. I have 2 kids, it's like I'm exhausted at the end of my day. But if I don't do it tonight, I absolutely will do it tomorrow. Okay. So what this unemployment rate would equal, U over L, would equal my rate of job separation over the sum of the rate of job separation plus the rate of job finding. Okay, so now what this does, reason why this is a cool equation is because then if you're a policymaker, this then means you've got 2 levers to push, right, and pull to actually fix the unemployment rate. Instead of just focusing on people finding a job, you could also work on more, which I think is actually underappreciated, is people keeping their job, right? So why do we spend all this money on like people revising their resume when maybe we should be spending money on people finding childcare, right? Like fortunately, you, who are all my bosses, were forgiving of me having my child talking in the background for an offer, right, for an hour, right? But if Cody wanted to be, a real dick about it and complained to my department chair and said, Scheiding's the worst professor ever because his kid's yelling in the background for the first hour of class. My tuition dollars are totally wasted. He should be fired. And let's say that my division chair is like, yeah, totally. He should totally be fired. And let's say that I am. I mean, is it my fault? I mean, yeah, it's my fault because I had a kid, but isn't it also the fault of society that like there's no childcare, right? I mean, it depends on where you are on the political spectrum, right? But one thing we could do to help the unemployment rate would be that we try to lower S with things like childcare, right? That we lower S by having better public transit, right? That we lower S, the rate of job separation, by giving people better benefits, right? That we lower S by raising wages, right? That's all a different way of lowering the unemployment rate. Can everyone see that from this equation?
Yeah.
Because you're lowering the numerator. Now, another way of doing it, but almost a harder way of doing it, would be by increasing F. How would you increase F? I don't know. Resume building. For those of you in the business division, you would know your utter hell of having to find internships. Right? Like, why do they make you find your own? Is it? There's a few of you from the business division, right, in this class? Hunter or no? Or is everyone here social sciences?
I'm social science.
I mean, I mean, I don't know. I turned out all right. I didn't have an internship, but I imagine that finding an internship seems pretty tough. Rated job finding. We could do it by, I don't know, better job searching techniques. I don't know. Right? I mean, it's a little bit harder because what you're doing here is you're trying to make the denominator larger, you know, so that the overall rate is falling. But it almost seems like when we're talking about unemployment, I think for better or worse, sometimes I think, in my opinion, more of the attention of policymakers is on this than on this. Right? I mean, that's my sense of things. But one of the cool things about intermediate macro is that you now got a sense of where the policy prescriptions all lie, right? That you can actually get into some pretty cool stuff and some pretty cool discussions by talking about all this stuff than you do about this stuff. In other words, why
Yes.
does unemployment, when you file for unemployment insurance, in most of the time outside of COVID, they make you like, I mean, I've been on unemployment insurance and I remember having to go to that dumb class about simple stuff like show up to your job on time. This is how you make a resume. And this was back in the era when like companies still posted ads and like want ads in the newspaper, like how to find a job in the want ads. Like, yeah, you learn something, but dude, you're just totally just trying to get your unemployment check and you're taking that stupid class so you can keep getting your unemployment check. I don't really think it really helped increase F, right? It just allowed you to keep getting your check. Whereas the government would have been better off, maybe, spending money on one of these things. Maybe. Okay. Here's an example of a way to figure out this problem here. If I wanted to find the natural rate of unemployment, in other words, I wanted to find the steady state of unemployment here, we could find it if, for instance, every month 1% of the employed workers lost their job and 19% of unemployed workers found a job. Then using that equation, we could find that the natural rate of unemployment was 5%. So that's simple math. You can find that it's 5%. I already said what this is, already gave this away. My excitement about it doesn't reduce the fact that this is in fact true. This is what I just said. The most important thing being that there's an or statement. Again, what I basically had said that politicians, my critique of politicians was that they tend to focus on this. When maybe their concern should be here. Right? I mean, that's my personal opinion. It also depends on your party of affiliation as well. If you're Republican or Democrat, Democrats and those who are left would be a little bit more focusing on lowering separation than on increasing finding. Really, the reason why, if anything, what's her name? Alexandria, AOC, whatever. And when I say that, I don't really. She's the kind of politician, right, that gets people like all excited, right, one way or the other, either like really against or really opposed, and that really turns me off. So when I don't say her name correctly. It's not that I don't care about her name. There's this whole controversy, and I actually agree with it when I say it's a controversy of like people should mispronounce intentionally mispronounce someone else's name. Alexandria, I think, right? Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Her whole thing with this green jobs is supposed to be increasing job finding because you make more jobs that are like related to like green infrastructure and things. I mean, if anything, she was an outlier in the Democratic Party because she was focused on increasing F more so than lowering S. So there's a reason why job finding is not 1% and not 100%. And the reason why it's not 100% is because it takes time to find a job, and the wage that workers are willing to work at is not what they're always willing to accept. So there's rigidity in the wages, and job search takes some time. So to the extent that these two things exist, that's why the finding is less than 100%, which is, again, what I'm arguing to you is what politicians tend to focus on. They tend to focus on making the job search process faster or removing wage rigidity. By that, I mean removing the minimum wage. Jeez, I mean, the minimum wage in Hawaii is what? Isn't it 10.10? Is it still? Or is it
So,
higher than that?
I'm not sure what it is. I think it's 10.10.
I mean, dude, I don't think you can make a living on 10.10 an hour. Dude, I pay Cody, I pay you more than 10.10 an hour.
That's true.
Which you haven't filed the time card, by the way. We should talk about that.
Yeah, I haven't been doing work for you. That's why. So
but you've totally been doing work. I hope you're keeping track of hours.
Okay.
So let's look at the reasons for this unemployment. So one of them would be this frictional unemployment that exists. This is, again, when an economist sees frictional unemployment, they're really not generally concerned. It's just the fact that people choose to do things, right? So someone could say, I don't work in town. I live in Waianae and I don't want to travel to town. So their geographic immobility might cause them to be looking for work, right? They might say, I don't like to work in February. So then they just wouldn't have a job in February. Or this woman that didn't want to work during the Olympics, right? Or it could be someone doesn't want to work second shift, or, right? There could be any number of reasons why a person could look for a job longer and be a little bit picky about finding the job. Or even, as Cody pointed out to me, working at a coffee shop really smells. You really stink when you smell like coffee all day. So, if I lost this job because Cody complained to my division chair, I could find a job at the Manoa Starbucks, but I might not work at that job because I don't want to smell like coffee. Also, I wouldn't understand why all those tourists are always outside of it taking a picture. But there could also be other reasons why an individual is frictionally unemployed. And it could also be because let's say that they're a highly skilled individual, but they live on the west side, or they're a highly skilled individual and they live in Maui. Well, unfortunately, all the high skilled jobs, the demand for those high skilled jobs is all in town, in Honolulu, right? So I know some people in finance that live on Maui, their family's on Maui, but they fly in every day to town. And they have to do that because that's where the jobs are. But you can imagine that someone could be looking for a long time for one of the few finance jobs that exist in Maui, waiting for that job to emerge. But the other reason, perhaps one of the more concerning reasons, would be if there's unemployment because of wages being rigid. And one of these rigidities would be if I had a minimum wage. Now, before you believe in the logic of saying, yeah, we shouldn't have minimum wages, let's say you're very Republican and you don't want to admit it to the rest of us in the class. Totally fine. I don't care. But you shouldn't believe that the minimum wage should be eliminated. And the reason why you shouldn't is because you should think about who is it that is getting a minimum wage job, right? I mean, not that I've done a complete census of the jobs out there, but there are very few jobs out there that actually pay 10.10 an hour. Really, the only kinds of jobs that pay 10.10 an hour are given to teenagers. All right. I mean, for the most part, right? Teenagers are willing to work those kinds of jobs and get that low pay because they have no expenses and they're really bad employees. That's why they are teenagers and they're allowed to, steal from their employer and be late and play music on the one computer when they should have been making T-shirts, right? That's why they get 10.10 an hour. Stephen, what kind of wage did you get at the T-shirt printing shop?
It was like under $10.
Was it the minimum wage though? It was the minimum wage.
Maybe a little bit more, but it was like just cash, so no taxes.
Okay, but basically it was, yeah. I mean, but right. So Stephen could be a somewhat bad employee, and his employer didn't care until the computer was touched. Then, no, then everything was bad. So when there's wage rigidity, the problem there is that let's say that Stephen has a reputation for cursing, right? Let's just say he likes to use swear words a lot, right? So if that's his reputation, and that's what all of his employers say on his letters of references, like, wow, he's a great employee, but man, he just drops the F bombs like nothing, right? Well, then he probably shouldn't get a job at like a library, right? That's going to be one of the reasons, right? But even if he can get a job at the library, now let's just say it's like a prison library, right, or something like that. I don't know where swearing is encouraged. Like in Shawshank Redemption. Remember the librarian in Shawshank Redemption? I mean, yeah, he was a prisoner, but I'm sure he could also swear. Actually, he does swear. He talks about the warden being really cheap, and he talked about I think he talked about the guy being like really cheap, but like I think he used the word asshole somewhere and talking about how cheap he was. Right, but that's how the kind of guy Steven is. He likes to use swear words. He's definitely not going to get a job at a children's library. But let's say that he says, "No, dude, I've changed. I've read a bunch of books. I went to therapy. I'm a changed man. I no longer swear. I found God. I don't know, right? Whatever his reason is." And the children's librarian is like, "Oh, do I take a risk on Steven, the ex cursing guy? I would, but I'm not willing to pay him $10.10 an hour because it's just too much of a risk. I'd be willing to try him out for $4 an hour, but he's just too much of a risk, right? And so he's not going to get this job because the minimum wage is 10.10 an hour, which is part of the reason why, for some of you, as some of you would know, sometimes you can get a job, but it pays a probationary wage in the very beginning. And that would be exactly what Stephen would be able to take advantage of, right? That the children's librarian would be able to pay him less, make sure that he doesn't swear a lot, and then pay him more. Now, what about you can get wage rigidity in other ways outside of the minimum wage, right? Like I'm in a union, and the union specifies the minimum wage that a professor gets paid. So even if I was teaching, I'm going to make fun of a discipline. I think actually all disciplines are pretty important at our university. But let's just say I'm just putting this out there. I don't care if that's your major. Disaster management, disaster preparation. I've never taken a class in it. Has anyone in this class ever taken a class in disaster preparation or management or whatever that one major is on our campus? Yes? No? I'm just going to guess, right? They're probably just saying disasters are bad, buy enough insurance. I don't know what else they're going to say about disasters, but the idea would be even that professor who's telling you very straightforward things has to get paid a certain minimum amount, despite the fact that I don't firmly believe that they're teaching. Hey, Piercy, are you trying to break into this room? Sorry, class. Cody is now going to tell my division chair. Hey, buddy. Hey, where's your mommy at? Uh-oh, now your mommy's yelling at you, and now you're shutting the door. Oh, Oh, here's mommy. Oh, no, but I'm almost on the phone. My wife is asking me if I'm going to have a break soon, but I told her that I'm going to power through this. Would everyone agree with that? Yes. It's a good call, huh? Power through this, and then we don't have to have a break. What I was saying is that, wow, this would be a perfect way of doing it, right? Let's not make fun of disaster management. Let's just talk about Scheiding, the professor, right? Yeah, I mean, I don't teach from the book, right? It's not like I read you a PowerPoint that someone else made. So yeah, I have some redeeming qualities, but I also have some pretty shitty qualities, right? Like I do curse. My kid does interrupt my class, right? So, but it doesn't matter how bad I am. I get a minimum wage that's guaranteed to me. Now, the problem is that there's only so many of my jobs, right? And there's someone who might just curse only a little bit more than me who's not going to get this job. So that's the one I just talked about, labor unions. We just did minimum wage. The other one would be the efficiency wage. The classic example for this is Costco, right? Costco pays its employees like very nice wages. I think generally here on the islands, it pays like 20 to 24 bucks an hour. It's a fantastic job to have. That's why the employees at Costco are always generally pretty happy, and why it's actually pretty hard to get a job at Costco. And I don't need to go over these slides. You can read this here, but it is true that the minimum wage, especially among teenagers, does cause unemployment. That labor unions do have like minimum wages that they impose, and it does increase unemployment. And the whole idea of why does Costco pay a higher than market, why do they pay so much more than 10 an hour, is because they want to get the best kinds of employees. And quite honestly, if you compare the employees at Sam's Club versus Costco, I'm a member of both clubs. The employees at Costco are far, far better than the ones at Sam's Club, primarily because they pay super great wages. And all that causes for us structural unemployment that we add to everything else. Okay, that takes care of unemployment, a rather short topic. They didn't want to squeeze in before the exam, but gives us kind of a nice segue into this last half of the class. Any questions about unemployment in general? Okay. I am going to check on the exam what it's saying for the letters. I might have to manually regrade things if in fact it was inaccurate, which is absolutely true. It could be that La Lima thought the answer was one thing when I typed it in. I'm not going to go into the details of things, but it's possible that you can, there's a certain setting, I don't know why you would pick this, but it can randomize the correct answer, which is obviously not what I would have wanted. But if I accidentally selected that, which it might sound like that's what I did, then that would be incorrect. Okay, I'm going to check on that tonight or tomorrow morning. I am not going to let the weekend start without you all having some knowledge about what your exam is, how you did on your exam. In the meantime, I'd like to strongly, strongly encourage the rest of you in class. About half of you have finished it. I would strongly, strongly encourage you all to get done those first 4 modules in the Bloomberg Market Concepts. If you haven't started them yet, this would be the perfect time to do it. Because let's say you did not do well on the exam, even after I fix everything, and you did do the Bloomberg Market Concepts and you got those 4 modules done, you will still be fine. I will make sure that you've got even just a low A if you've got the Bloomberg Market Concepts done and you did poorly on the exam. Everyone understand what I just said? Yes?
Yep.
Yep.
And the reason why I say that, this Bloomberg thing, the reason why it is so important, for some of you who may know him, who's in Cody, you would know him, Levi, who's in my Tuesday class. He's getting an internship and is almost graduating. And he was saying that for the accounting firm he's trying to get a job with, they keep talking about the fact of how great it is. He's doing this Bloomberg market certification, Bloomberg market concepts. And again, with the shitty job market that you are all facing, I think the best thing you can really do for all of yourselves to make yourselves more marketable, as horrible as that might sound to all of you, you have to become marketable to some extent. Getting Bloomberg market certified is going to be the least painful way to make yourself more certified, beautiful in the eyes of a potential employer. Okay, if you have no idea how to get Bloomberg market certified and you don't even want to do it, or like you don't know how to do it, send me an email and I will put you in touch with the TAs that I pay over minimum wage to help walk you through. That would be like Cody, to walk you through how to get signed up for Bloomberg market concepts. So if you don't know how to do it and you don't want to watch the videos and you want to be totally lazy about it, Cody will totally help you out and he will track his hours and he will get paid and I will help to lower unemployment. Okay, everyone. Thank you for putting up with me and my child, who seemed to take up more of my time today than usual. I will see you all next week, Thursday, when perhaps we have a new president, either a re-elected president or a new president. Okay. I will sign off last, as typically is the case.